Friday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope you guys are all having a great day out there today. Final show of the week and a very good one at that. Velle E. Neal III joins me here in a little bit. We have our daily delivery debate segment, a timely one in which we will talk about Gophers football, the Timberwolves, and championship possibilities for Minnesota teams in 2025. Got some extra Wolves thoughts at the end of the show, as well as some extra Gophers football thoughts, both of those based on things that have happened Thursday since Velle and I recorded, but dovetails nicely into a couple things that we talked about. Wild won last night. Gophers men's basketball did not, and that's an understatement, lost by 20. Get into that here in a minute, as well as a basketball problem that reminds me of the baseball problem that I've talked about plenty of times here. First, though, what I miss, I want to start with the Twins, and they should be thankful. The offseason, the baseball offseason, is not a race. It's not a sprint to the finish. There's still time, almost 3 months between now and the start of the season, almost 2 months between now and the start of spring training. So there is still time for them to do something different this offseason, to make you look at things and say, hey, maybe, just maybe, they can be better. I will say, however, at this point, this has been a thoroughly uninspiring offseason, maybe more so than any that I can remember in recent memory. You know, you've had some off seasons where they pulled off much more interesting things. And again, like some of their bigger moves tend to happen in January and February. I'm giving them some time. I'm just saying, to this point, and I think what drove me over the edge was an acquisition Thursday and then reading a quote in Bobby Nightingale Jr.'s story about that I'd missed from the winter meeting. So the Twins acquired Mike Ford on Thursday. Minor league free agent contract, 251 career games. He can play some first base, can hit. He's a lefty, kind of like your classic lefty masher who, if he gets a hold of one, he's gonna do some damage, but the damage has been sporadic. Let's just say that in his career. He hit 150 last year in the majors before being released by the Reds, finishing the year in Japan. 32 years old, career batting average of 205, career OPS of 700, which, okay, not great for a first baseman, but okay, you can see some of the potential, I guess. 2 years ago with Seattle, probably had the kind of year the Twins would hope he would have here if he makes it to the Major League roster. 251 plate appearances, 16 home runs, a 798 OPS. But here, it's just a body. It's a guy who has got 205 career batting average. Like I said, finished the year last year in Japan. Their options, though, this speaks more than anything to the options that they have right now at that position, because it is not a pleasant-looking thing to look at their options. And then Rocco Baldelli, this was the quote that I hadn't seen from the winter meetings. Twins manager Rocco Baldelli saying, "If it comes to Jose Miranda and Eddie Julian preparing themselves to play first base for us, then we just have to dive in head first, do it, and get the job done." Both of those guys have work to do on the defensive side of the ball over at first base, but that's what the offseason and spring training is for. We've seen guys make great jumps defensively for us at different points over the last few years, and we'll need those two guys, if it does come to that scenario, to do the same. Sounds like it's like disaster planning. It's like, oh man, if this is what happens, we just have to kind of get through it, right? We got to hope these guys are better, get better during spring training. It's a cheap in-house lefty-righty first base platoon. Carlos Santana is gone. He manned the position a lot last year, gave them gold glove defense, gave them pretty good offense as a switch hitter. He gave them tons of value on his contract, and he signed a $12 million deal to play a year in Cleveland, his old team. So he's not here. They've got a big hole. Alex Kirilloff retired. So you've got these two guys, these two holdovers who at various points have produced for them, right? Like Julian 2 years ago had a great season. Miranda a few years back, and even last year to a certain degree, had a good season. It's like they've shown they can hit. They've not shown they can field much. They've not shown they can do anything consistently. So that's kind of what Rocco's saying. Like, if it comes down to this is what we're going to do. And I feel like the Twins have a lot of that at a lot of different positions this season. A lot of hopes, a lot of ifs, and not a lot of sure things. Lavelle and I have talked plenty of times about his optimism relative to mine, how he thinks that if they stay healthy, they can be a pretty good team, how that was what ultimately doomed them last year. I'm just looking at this roster, and I don't see it. I don't like what I see. I don't see much happening this offseason based on where their payroll is and where they are determined to have their payroll be, especially with this ownership change potentially looming. I'm as uninspired about this offseason so far as I have been a Twins offseason in a long time, and the signing Thursday did not do anything to change my opinion. In fact, it enhanced that opinion. Maybe I'm just grumpy today, but I was watching the Wolves lose to Boston 118-115 last night. Some entertainment value. It was a close enough game. It just bothers me, though, watching Boston play. And, I commented on this on social media, and I get some people writing back like you're an old man yelling at a cloud. You know what? I don't think that's it. I think this is a basketball has a problem right now. The NBA has a problem with three-pointers, and it's a baseball problem that has come to basketball. It's permeating probably football to a certain degree right now, too, and it is this. Baseball figured out maybe 5-10 years ago that the most efficient way to score runs was to hit home runs and draw walks, and you had all sorts of guys who changed their approach and became three true outcome hitters: home run, strikeout, or walk. And it became a much less pleasing game to watch, even if it was a more efficient game to try to score runs and prevent runs. To counteract that, pitching staff started loading up on explosive arms, guys who could throw in max effort all the time, increasing the number of strikeouts we're seeing. And now there's even fewer balls in play, stuff like that. So baseball is not a good game to watch right now from that standpoint. How does that relate to basketball? We're getting three true outcomes from a lot of teams right now. The Celtics are a three true outcome team. You're either going to make a three, you're going to miss a three, or you're going to try to get a shot at the rim if the drive and kick game becomes a drive instead of a kick. That's it. That's their offense. They turned it over 3 times last night. I'm not saying they do it poorly. They do it beautifully. They do it better than anybody else. That's why they were NBA champions last year. That's why they have a fantastic chance of getting back to the NBA Finals again this year and maybe beating whoever comes out of the West, probably Oklahoma City, in another series. That's how good they are at it, but it is not a fun brand of basketball to watch. Against the Wolves, do you realize this? They attempted 57 three-pointers. 57 three-pointers out of their 92 field goal attempts. They made 22 of them, so they made about 39%. They made 50% of their overall shots. They shot 6 free throws, turned it over 3 times. I mean, the efficiency in this game is off the charts, but is efficiency what you want to watch? Is that an aesthetically pleasing brand of basketball to watch? Basketball robots drive and kick over and over again until they get the three-pointer they want. No, it is not. So I'm just kind of tired of the evolution of the NBA. The Wolves have gone this direction to a certain degree too. They shot a ton of threes last night. They can't be much more efficient, quote unquote, on offense than they were last night. 39 three-pointers attempted, 21 made. They made 54% of their threes. They turned it over 15 times, which actually isn't terrible for them. They made 20 of their 22 free throws, and they still could not win this game because Boston is such a ruthless basketball machine right now. Not fun basketball to watch. Fun for the Celtics to be 25-9, but not fun basketball to watch. They've got a problem in this league. I think the only solution is this. Make the three-pointer another foot or two longer, take away the corner three, and then we'll see how teams adapt to a different NBA. Slightly more positive news, I'd say much more positive news. Wild beat the Capitals 4-3 in a shootout last night. Still no Kirill Kaprizov. Marc-Andre Fleury, good in this game. The supplementary scoring, good in this game. Felt like an important win for them against a good Eastern Conference team. The Wild clearly not at full strength still right now, missing some of their best players. But to win that game without Kaprizov, without Jared Spurgeon, without Philip Gustafson in net, even though he's healthy, that tells me something. That tells me that they have maybe righted the ship, come out of this little mini slump they were in, starting to play a little bit better, however you want to term it. So I think that was an important win for them last night. Gopher men's basketball loses by 20 to Purdue. I can't really say much about this team right now because I can't take them seriously. That's just a function of who's on the roster, what I think of them right now, and that's unfortunate. They could have been a really good team this season if everybody had stuck around. I feel bad for Ben Johnson. I feel bad that they could not forestall what happened this offseason, but this is just not a good or serious team right now, and I can't say much about them until I get some visual evidence to suggest that I should take them seriously. It's daily delivery debate time. Good to be back with Velle E. Neal III for the first time in 2025. Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Did you have a good New Year, good holiday?
It was great. Really good time. Good Christmas, good eating, deep fried turkey. It was great. So
there you go.
Ready to rock and roll in 2025.
You are. We'll see if Minnesota teams are. You wrote a couple things recently, including one kind of a look ahead to how 2025 could be great. And some of that can frame some of what we're going to talk about here today. So yeah, maybe just kind of give me some perspective on what brought you to a lot of those things for 2025, and then I'll get into some of the things I want to talk to you about.
Well, it's weird because I'm just kind of looking back because I've done a version of this column in each of the previous 2 years, looking ahead to 2025 and who could be in for a huge year or a big moment, or he's a key player, a key coach, or a team with a lot of promise. So when I was going through that, I realized that, wow, 2024 was actually a pretty cool sports year for this area, short of winning a title. I will say that. But you had
the Frost one, at least.
That's right. The Frost did win. The Frost won. The Lynx went to the finals. The Wolves went to the Final Four. The Vikings are rolling. The Wild are rolling. I was like, man, this is actually a lot of good stuff happened in 2024. And fans should be pretty fired up about 2025, especially right off the bat. You've got two teams in the Vikings and the Wild who are considered among the top teams in their league. And the Vikings are playing for top dog status in the NFC this week with the primetime game at Detroit. And I was like, man, this was a good year. They're slingshotting right into 2025 with a lot of momentum, a lot of gusto, a lot of hope. I noticed I couldn't even come up with a way to mention Minnesota Twins anywhere in that. I just thought I'd be forcing it if I would use watch out for Royce Lewis. He's in for a big year. I was like, they're all in for a big year if they stay healthy. So I just left the Twins out of it. I just stuck with the teams that have tangible evidence that they are the real deal.
Well, and it was definitely a year of unexpected success last year too, right? Like we didn't think the Wolves were going to be a Western Conference Finals team. Like we knew they were good by the middle of last season, so by the time the calendar flipped, but we didn't think the Lynx were going to be much good at all. We didn't think the Vikings were going to be much good at all. We didn't know anything about the PWHL team from Minnesota. We didn't think the Loons were going to be very good, and they won a playoff series. I mean, there's all sorts of kind of unexpected. The Wild, we didn't think the Wild was going to be very good. Like we didn't think anybody who we thought was going to be pretty mediocre ended up being pretty good last year, which kind of gives you some hope for this year coming up. However, one of the teams that was kind of like one of the only teams that kind of like matched expectations, I think, for this year was the Gopher football team. And I want to get into something you wrote about PJ Fleck and how, you see all these teams go to the playoffs. 9-10 wins puts you in competition now for a 12-team playoff. Could be 16 at some point here. Daily delivery debate question number one is something you wrote about. Is the heat on PJ Fleck to get them into playoff contention at least sometime soon?
I don't know if it's full blast heat, but it's got to be like at least a heat warmer or some sort of seat warmer applied to him. Looking at these college football games, and I know there've been a couple blowouts, but I thought that The Texas Arizona State game was pretty wild there. That was a snoozer for 3 quarters and then went bananas in the fourth. And I'm sitting there looking at these records and I'm like, man, you get the double-digit wins, you got a shot at this thing. And then I went and looked up PJ's record, and I didn't realize it's been 8 years now. And he's only hit double-digit wins once. And I'm like, what should be the standards here? I know Minnesota isn't considered a top dog program. I know they don't get 5-star recruits. I was reminded in emails today about we're getting outspent in NIL, which I agree, but at the same time, good coaches coach their players up. You can, there'll be years we can get around all that, like Indiana.
Yes.
We've actually had this conversation before, Mike. What should be our standards? And I think we came to the conclusion that every 2-3 years, come up with a 10-win season or 11-win season, and go to a juicy bowl game. Well, now if you win 11 games, you're in the field of 12. You know, and so I just think the onus should be the scrutiny should be on PJ a little bit for winning just having double-digit wins just once in the last 8 years. Now, if you want to kick out the COVID year and make it 7 years, fine. But I just think that's too long of a stretch there without having success. And he had a chance this year. The loss of Rutgers was bad. Losing to North Carolina, who then got 70 hung on him by James Madison, was bad. He played the moral victory card in the losses to Michigan and State, and they got screwed over a little bit against Michigan. And the Penn State game was a battle they could have won, but PJ should be sitting on 9 wins going into this game, in my opinion. And then you win this bowl game with your favorite to win. You got a 10-win season. I just think we're not asking him to be a national champion. But we got to see more victories than what he's been producing in recent years.
You got to be in the playoff conversation at least every 3 to 5 years. I think that's fair. I think you got to maintain a certain baseline, and I think this year was kind of that baseline, right? Like 7-5 season. That can be kind of like your baseline. You don't want to go below that, and then when you have a better team, 8, 9, maybe 10 wins, and that gets you in that conversation. I think that should be the standard for a team like them. And like we've talked about, you're right. Like what this playoff does, it's, in a lot of years, it's not really about Alabama or Georgia, even though Alabama didn't get in this year. Like it's not about the teams that are there every year, Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. It's mostly about those teams on that next tier. Like Indiana doesn't get a sniff of this in most years. They don't even get close to this in most years of their existence. In a 4-team playoff, this does not exist for a team like Minnesota or Indiana. It is the fact that it's possible now and could get expanded even more to 16 means that if you're just the 16th best team in the country, which you ought to be at various points, every 3 to 5 years, I think you're right. I think that it doesn't put them on the hot seat, but it creates a different expectation than just, hey, go to a nice bowl game every now and then. It's, hey, get into the playoff because it's there for you. It's possible.
Yeah, and all these coaches are going through the same thing. They all have 1-score games. I know PJ made a big deal about playing 7 1-score games. I'm like, okay, well, what's your record in those games? You got to convert, injuries, NIL, schedule. Copy editor yesterday was like, oh, you're missing the point about the Indiana schedule is so easy. I was like, every team run, especially now with these super conferences, there are going to be teams that are going to have variable schedules, that they're going to have schedules in which it's set up for them to have success. Take advantage of it. And Cignetti did that with Indiana. And what's happened now? The recruiting's improved for next year. NIL money's coming in, and PJ needs to provide that juice. Oh, by the way, Mike, I was talking to someone who knows an NFL scout, and he asked him, have you guys seen Indiana play yet? I said, oh, yeah, we've been down there. And he was like, okay, what they got? Who are their studs? He's like, Indiana's got nothing.
Really?
So I said, he won 11 games. And I think that their highest rated player may be drafted in the 4th round of the upcoming draft. So
just a true team. Yeah.
You coach them up, take advantage of your schedule, get it done.
Yeah, I agree. I think the expectations will get raised as time goes on. NIL is a tricky thing to navigate, although I think some of the new rules that will come into effect might level some of that playing field. But yeah, absolutely get into that mix at some point because it will be expected of, if you want to be a good program, you're going to need to be in that conversation. Question number 2, Lavelle. Who has been the biggest disappointment for the Timberwolves this season? Individual, whether it's an individual player or some sort of collective idea, what's been the biggest disappointment?
The biggest disappointment is how long it's taken. Well, I actually want to jump on a couple of people's throats, but the fact it's taken so long for them to figure out how to blend in the two new guys, DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. I am torn between Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert for the most disappointing Wolves player. Conley somehow is shooting better from 3-point range than he is with 2-point from overall. And I'm like, that doesn't happen very often. He got off to such a terrible shooting start. And I don't think that helped the Wolves start to the season. But I am going to focus on Rudy Gobert because Defensive Player of the Year, just because of his status on the team, what he means to the team defensively. His scoring is down, his rebounds are down, and we're finding out now in recent games that Julius Randle plays better when Gobert's off the floor. Yeah, and he's playing with Na, and he's playing with Naz Reid than he is with Rudy. Now, I don't want to put all that on Rudy, but I do think from a performance standpoint, he's been the most disappointing Timberwolf up to this point of the season. I sound like Trent Tucker now, but I just need to see more rim protection, a little more scoring, but the rebounding is baffling to me. I don't know what that's a product of. And if I'm not mistaken, too, are we seeing Rudy spending more time on the bench in the fourth quarter? I think we have at certain points. You just look at the rotations of who's on the floor at what time. And that tells you that gives you an indication of who's not performed or is underperforming, and that's the Frenchman, Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I don't disagree with either one of those, although I had 3 different names on my list. I have Jaden McDaniels as a candidate because this is year 5, and he still hasn't taken any sort of meaningful step forward with his game. He's basically the same. To me, he's the same guy he was in the second year of his career now that he's in his 5th year. I don't trust him to make a shot. I trust him on defense, but you can get him off his game. His development, especially for what he makes, has been disappointing. Chris Finch has been disappointing to me this season just in terms of unlocking their offensive potential. They haven't been a great offensive team for 3 years, and some of that's Gobert, but you know what? You know what Utah's offensive rating was the year before they traded Rudy Gobert? It was number 1 in the NBA. You can have an elite NBA offense with Rudy Gobert on your team. You got to figure that out. He has not figured that out. He's not figured out his rotations. He's playing too many guys, too many minutes, not developing any of the young guys at all for the last 2 or 3 years. I'm down on Finchy right now. I think he's a good coach, but I'm down on his contributions this year. And my last one is Anthony Edwards. I don't like Ant's game this year. I don't like his leadership. They traded away Karl Anthony Towns because they thought they had their franchise guy. He has not played or acted like a franchise guy this year. He made a bunch of shots early in the season. We're happy for him. He's not going to the rim. He's complaining that there's no driving lanes. Find a driving lane. Find a way. You are the guy. It is on you to get it done, and you're not getting it done right now.
We just named 5 people for the Wolves.
Yeah, yeah, we did. We had 5 different people. Yeah. I mean, Conley, obviously, like, he's fallen off the face of the earth. They can't play him at the end of the game because he can't guard anybody. Like, that Mavericks game was probably painful. He gets switched off onto Kyrie. He can't stay in front of him. Like, you get to a certain age, sometimes you just fall off a cliff. It seems like that's happened. He did catch fire the other day against Oklahoma City. It was like he was playing terribly. I was like about to tweet that something about how he's unplayable, but my son had like taken my phone into the other room, and then he hit like 3 threes in a row, and I'm like, well, I'm glad I wasn't able to say what I wanted to say because it saved me the embarrassment of people being like, oh, really? The guy who just made 3 threes in a row? I'm like, yeah, okay. So that was good, but he's not been great. And I agree, Gobert certainly could be better. The fit is just something's just off with the fit right now. It's just something's just not right. The pieces aren't right. It's not been a good year for anybody associated with that franchise.
To borrow a phrase from Finchy, I still think the ball's a little sticky, especially when Ant wants to slay the dragon every time he comes down the court, and setting up people off, waving off screens, and trying to, dominate his opponent. And sometimes he needs to move the ball, move it out the ball. And I think that would help keep everybody involved and everybody productive. But your suggestions are pretty good. Jay McDaniels, they swung and missed with that contract, signing him to a max contract. And I know he had upside at the time, and he was going to develop his offense and be a two-way player. And it hasn't happened. People were asking for him and requesting him in trades, and they wanted to hold on to him. And maybe they should have listened. Looking back, hindsight's 2020. But he has not become the player that the Wolves or we thought he was going to become.
No, he has not. Last one, Lavelle. This kind of gets to your 2025 piece as well. Everybody should go check that out at StarTribune.com. Outside of a Vikings Super Bowl, which I think we can all agree would be the end-all, be-all of championships that could be won here, just because for many, many reasons, what championship would mean the most to Minnesota fans in 2025?
Yeah, that's a great one. I would say, well, I can't say the Twins because they're not championship worthy, but I would say the Wild, just because this is a state of hockey and it's in their blood. And fans here went through so much with the North Stars and Norm Green and the team moving to Dallas and Sid Hartman telling them, once you lose the team, never come back. They're never coming back. Hockey will never be back here ever again. And now the rebirth did happen in 2000. And we watched them go up and down, with Jacques Lemaire, Mike Yeo, Boudreau, Evanson, and now John Hines. And, now they have some footing here. Now they got some juice. They're winning a couple games even without their best player, Kirill Kaprizov, who's one of the best players in hockey. This team, when healthy, is going to be a threat. And I just think you look at the X on a nightly basis, it's usually around 18,000 people there. They continually sell out.
Mm-hmm.
You see the excitement, you see the passion, you see how much the sport means to people in this state. I just think it would be a very emotional moment from the North Shore all the way down to the Iowa border for this state if the Wild could get it done.
I don't necessarily disagree. I do think a Twins World Series, again, it's probably not likely this year. I do think a Twins World Series would still mean the most just in general, because I think when they're good, they're the second biggest kind of broad appeal team in the state. I think, when the Twins are good, they're the clear number 2, I think, in this state behind the Vikings. And even at times they can be one, if the Vikings are down and stuff like that.
They were 1-1 in the last year.
What's that?
They were 1-1 going into the 2024 season.
Yeah, in a lot of places. Vikings coverage still gets consumed in a way that makes you realize how many people are diehards here. But I think a Twins World Series, I think you're right. I tend to overrate what a Wolves championship would mean. I think generally speaking, just because of if you look across the state, there's probably a broader appeal to an NHL championship versus an NBA championship. I think for a certain segment of fandom, an NBA, the Wolves winning the NBA title, which they got reasonably close to last year, would be the biggest deal. Would be an absolute huge deal. But I think statewide, I think you're right. I think I'd put a Stanley Cup ahead of an NBA championship, even though neither franchise, even going back to the North Stars, you have to go way back to the Lakers before, it's 65 years since Minnesota won an NBA title, and those were different NBA days. So I tend to agree with you, but I think Twins, if they won, would be a bigger deal, but less likely to win this year than the Wild are for sure.
Yeah, the thing about the Twins too that I'm not taking lightly is the fact that they have the Twins fans who are driving from the Dakotas or up from Iowa or over from Western Wisconsin to watch them play. There is a true Twins territory, which the other pro sports teams in town don't have. So it would mean a lot to it. It would affect a wider range of folks in these parts if the Twins could somehow get it done.
And fans will have an easier time watching them this year in terms of availability, because they should be available for cord cutters from non-cable subscribers, things like that. You sent me something the other day though. It sounds like Comcast is getting ready to hike up some prices for cable subscribers. That won't sit well in Twins territory.
Now, it's not sit well with me because I am a Comcast subscriber, and I have to call every 6 months to go, why is my bill over $250 a month again? And we figure out ways to get it down. And then within 6 months, there's another price hike. I bundle, so I don't know if the price hike is coming from the internet charge, the satellite TV charge, or the phone charge.
Yeah.
So I get it from 3 different directions. And now the bill's just out there. It's over $250 a month. And I'm grumbling. I do write it off on taxes because I need it for my profession. But still, at the time, you see the number come across, and you're like, good grief.
Come on. Yeah. Awesome, Lavelle. Well, happy 2025 to you. Appreciate you hopping on with me, and we'll probably talk to you again next week.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Great stuff from Lavelle, as always. We always record those in the morning, and then it's like 24 hours till they go live. 2 things happened since then. One, Anthony Edwards had another bad game. I was hoping that I'd be proven wrong, that I'd have to say on this segment, yeah, I was hard on Ant with Lavelle, but then he had a great game against the Celtics. That's not the case. 5 of 16 from the field, 15 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, a -10 in 36 minutes. He was often, I won't say the worst player on the court. That's not true, but he was often one of the least efficient players on the court. It was to the point where they took out Josh Minott and put Edwards back in. I think it was like early in the fourth quarter, and I was like, I'd kind of rather see Minott right now. He was all over the court, flying around, blocking shots, making threes, making his free throws. I thought Minott was better than Edwards at that point, and that tells you a lot. And then there's this post-game quote from Ant that is very concerning. He's talking about the double team still, talking about how frustrated he is. Doesn't seem like he has a lot of answers when it comes to these double teams. He said after the game, here's the quote, it's a good brand of basketball, but it's not how I want to play, talking about passing out of double teams. I'm only 23. I don't want to just be passing the ball all night, but that's the way they're guarding me. I think I have to. They're doubling me, definitely. It's like, bro, what is going on? I'm trying to figure out. I don't know what to do, honestly, but it's not fun. I don't want to look like I'm not trying or not as good as I am, because I am, but I can't show it because I'm getting double teamed. It's definitely frustrating to see these guys cooking us, and I can't cook them. Oh, man. That's not good. That's not good at all, that he doesn't have an answer for this, that he's getting frustrated. He's got to this is his 5th year in the league. Like, guys, the best players on teams are going to get double teamed. He's got to figure this out. Finch has got to help him get this figured out, because you cannot have your best player frustrated. You cannot have your best player wondering, what am I supposed to do to break out of this double team? Hey, how about this? How about you pass it and you get it back? How about you get to a set where you can't get double teamed, or get rid of the ball before you get double teamed? Teams are going to keep doing it until they find solutions. Ant does not have a solution right now. He just has frustration, and that is frustrating to me. Final thing for the cooler, I was heartened to read Randy Johnson's story about Gopher football today. Headed to the bowl game in Charlotte today against Virginia Tech. 6-6 Virginia Tech, 7-5 Gophers. But the whole theme of the story was how much of a chance the Gophers now have with the expanded 12-team playoff. Coach PJ Fleck, Thursday. It's a real goal for us. When you start to see some of the teams that were not only in it, played in it, anybody's got a shot. I'm not saying it can happen every single year, but absolutely it's possible. We talk about it with our players. We talk about how close we were this year. Now, 7-5 doesn't sound close, but yeah, they had probably 3 games this season that were coin flips, that if they go the other way, they could possibly be in that conversation. Quinn Carroll, offensive tackle. At the beginning of the season, that was our goal. Ever since January, when we knew this would be the new rule with the 12-team playoff, with our schedule and with how talented we are, we can play with anybody. Looking back at a lot of games this year, losing by 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, you understand we could have and probably should have been there. Minnesota is a college football playoff contending team and should be every year. Yes, love that mentality. Now let's see them go do it sometime in the next few years. Let's see them in that mix. I'm not saying they have to get there. I'm saying they have to get at least close where they're on the cusp, where we're having a conversation. Are they in or out? If they win this game, they're in. If they lose this game, they're out. Things like that. That is what we need to see sometime soon from this program. And I think Lavelle and I would agree on that point after what we talked about today. That will do it for me today. That'll do it for this week. Should be plenty of great stuff coming up. Of course, Vikings versus Lions, the big main event on Sunday. We'll have full coverage of that. Don't know if there'll be a post-game podcast for that since that's a Sunday night game. And Royce and I will go really early Monday morning. We'll see if the game warrants it. We'll see what happens in that game. But certainly tons of stuff next week, and I'm sure we'll talk lots of Vikings next week in addition to other things. Until then, I am Michael Rand, back at it again in a few days.